The Jew is loose and coming back. Thank you, choir. What a blessing. And I followed them back and forth from the land this morning. They made the trip and did, appreciate their ministry immensely. So great to be here. We are a resurrection people. You know, the word Easter has its roots in the word Eastern. And traditionally, historically, back in millennia in Christian history, then church buildings would always be built with the door facing east, the front door facing east, because that was the direction of Jerusalem and where the resurrection occurred. And the resurrection changed everything. It reoriented everything, changed all of life. So everything was oriented around the resurrection. We're a resurrection people. And the reason we meet on Sunday is because it's Resurrection Day. We celebrate, we set aside a Sunday we call Easter every year and make an emphasis of that, and that's certainly appropriate and it's worthwhile. But the reality is every Sunday is Resurrection Day. And we live in a resurrection era, so to speak. Jesus' resurrection changed everything. And the tragedy is that so many times we don't live in light of that reality. We live like Jesus is dead. But our prayer this morning is that we will live like Jesus is alive. And Father, that is our prayer. That as we worship and celebrate you and the reality of the resurrection, that we will live like you're alive. Help us not be confused like the disciples were in the upper room the night of the resurrection before you appeared among them. And Lord, even the following week when Thomas, who was unaware of your presence, as you had even heard his proclamation that he wouldn't believe unless he could see you, and you repeated that to him. Lord, you're with us and you're aware of everything even more than we are all the time because you're alive. Let us live like it. In Jesus' name, amen. This is the year of the evangelist in DAC. We're talking about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the primary evangelist in the book of Acts. And so therefore, we're going to read the account of the resurrection from Matthew chapter 28. Dawn was breaking on the first day of the week. The Sabbath was over. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary had come to look at the tomb when suddenly there was a great earthquake. An angel of the Lord came down from heaven. He came to the stone, rolled it away, and sat down on top of it. Now, let me just interject here. I'm intrigued by that detail that Matthew adds, that the angel sat on the stone. I have no idea the significance of that, but I find it a fascinating detail to include. He sat down. Looking at him was like looking at lightning, and his clothes were white like snow. The guards trembled with terror at him and became like corpses themselves. "Don't be afraid," said the angel to the women. "I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He isn't here. He's been raised, as he said he would be. Come and see the place where he was lying. And then go at once and tell his disciples that he's been raised from the dead and that he's going on ahead of you to Galilee. That's where you'll see him. There, I've told you." The women scurried off quickly away from the tomb in a mixture of terror and great delight and went to tell his disciples. Suddenly there was Jesus himself. He met them and said, "Greetings." They came up to him and took hold of his feet, prostrating themselves in front of him. "Don't be afraid," said Jesus to them. "Go and tell my brothers that they should go to Galilee. Tell them they'll see me there." While the women were on their way, some of the soldiers who had been on guard went into the city and told the chief priest everything that had happened. They called an emergency meeting with the elders, allotted a substantial sum of money, and gave it to the soldiers. "This," they told them, "is what you are to say. His disciples came in the night while we were asleep and stole him away. And if this gets reported to the governor, we'll explain it to him and make sure you stay out of trouble." They took the money and did as they had been instructed, and this story still goes the rounds among the Jews to this day. So the 11 disciples went off to Galilee, to the mountain where Jesus had instructed them to go. There they saw him and worshiped him, though some hesitated. Jesus came towards them and addressed them. "All authority in heaven and on earth," he said, "has been given to me. So you must go and make all the nations into disciples. Baptize them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Teach them to observe everything I have commanded you. And look, I am with you every single day to the very end of the age." Now, this is an account of Jesus' resurrection, not unlike the other accounts in the other Gospels. And I'm sure that the majority of us today are familiar with this account to some degree. And I'm grateful we're all here because I'm operating with the assumption that all of us came this morning with the assumption that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, that the Scriptures teach that clearly, and we're here in honor of that incredible and miraculous event. So we've heard it before. And I don't know exactly what the phrase is because I've heard it both ways, but the phrase familiarity breeds either contentment or contempt. It's probably both, but I'm going to use it in regard to contentment in that I think that sometimes our familiarity with things in the Bible enhances our ability to just kind of gloss over them and look over them and take them for granted and not see them for what they really are. You know, the Bible, because it's the prophets of Israel and the apostles of Jesus, as they were inspired by the Holy Spirit, using their own language in their own context of their own life to speak the truth that they had observed and that God had implanted in their heart and their mind. The Bible, because even though it's written by humans, inspired by God, as God is infinite, the Bible is infinite. In other words, you never really read the Bible and read it correctly without discovering something new and fascinating about it. And that's so true of this account. In other words, think about it this way. If yesterday, if you had gone to a funeral and you came here today and the person you observed in the casket yesterday was sitting beside you in the pew today, huh? Well, folks, that's what we just read about. That's what happened. Jesus rose from the dead. And as I read this account for the numberless times, I'm fascinated, I'm also frustrated, and I think it's fantastic. And we're going to talk about those alliterations. And first, we're going to talk about the thing that is fascinating to me. First of all, we find as the women come to the tomb that the stone has been rolled away by an angel, and the angel is visible and communicates with the women. And it seems to me, as the angel says, Jesus is not here, he's risen. The angel was the first evangelist. The first people to preach the good news about Jesus was an angel. Angels were also the first ones to communicate the incarnation. When Jesus was supernaturally conceived in the womb of Mary, an angel communicated that to Mary and to Joseph. I don't know what to make of that, but I'm fascinated by it, that God chose his angelic servants to to be the first evangelist. And why I say evangelist, what do you mean? There's really a play on words there, because the word evangelist is from the Greek word euangelion. That transliterated, phonetic equivalent, sound equivalent into English comes out evangel or evangelist. And what it means is it's the word angel with an EU in front of it. In other words, angelos, angel, means messenger. And a euangelos is a messenger with a good message, a positive message. Like at a funeral when somebody has a eulogy. A eulogy is a word about the deceased that's a positive message about the deceased. Well, it's amazing that the first angels were the first evangelists, and the word evangel actually is the word angel. I don't know. May not do a thing for you, but it's really interesting to me. Secondly, in verse 8, we find that the women were at the tomb. And when the women came to the tomb, the angel told them, go and tell his disciples that he's risen from the dead. You see, what we learn, and is fascinating to me, is the first human evangelists were women. Women believers were the first human evangelists. The first commission to spread the good news of the resurrection of Jesus was to women. And I think that that's significant, as they were sent to inform and enlighten the male disciples. And I don't know what to make of that, except to say that if you're a female follower of Jesus, you should be encouraged that the angels first gave the commission to evangelize, and the first messengers of the resurrection was to women, and you should be confident in your ability to powerfully communicate the truth about Jesus to other people who need to know about him. You should be confident in that, because the angels were certainly confident in those women who came to the tomb that morning. I'm also fascinated by the guards. The guards had what I would call as a misplaced fear. You say, what are you talking about? In fact, I think it's actually humorous. I read this and it's funny. Now, the guards, as much as the women, knew that Jesus had risen from the dead, right? I mean, the angel comes, the guards are there, and they were very much aware of the angel's presence and what had gone on, because the Bible says they were basically catatonic, right? So the first thing they do is they run to the Jewish authorities, who had been the ones to turn Jesus over to the Romans to have him crucified. And the guards go to them to say, oh, by the way, help us out, because we don't want to get punished because he's missing, and, you know, hello, here's what happened, whatever. Help me understand that. They, as much as anybody, know that Jesus, his body wasn't stolen. He rose from the dead. And they're still concerned about getting in trouble with the authorities. Why wouldn't they be more concerned about what Jesus thinks? After all, he's the one that died and rose again. He's the one that beat death. That other crowd didn't even have the power to kill him when they thought they could. Yeah, they had him dead, but death couldn't even hold him. Why wouldn't you be more concerned about what Jesus thinks than what this other crowd thinks? And then the Jewish authorities, even more so. The Jewish leaders had a misplaced fear. They even knew, look what they had done in Matthew 27. Let's read this together. Sir, they said, when that deceiver was still alive, we recall that he said, after 3 days I'll rise again. Okay, it was the third day. The body was gone. The guards confirmed that the body wasn't stolen. They knew it. They were awake the whole time. They weren't asleep. I mean, they didn't miss out on something here. They knew what the angel had said. They heard it too. And yet the Jewish authorities just like the guards, are so consumed with their own reputation and their own image and their own ability to hang on to power, which they thought they had, and they don't even realize that the one they tried to kill, that he beat death. Why would they not be concerned about what Jesus thinks of them more than anything else? I'm fascinated at how dense is a mild way of putting it, but sin will make you, thank you, sin will make you, and they are the epitome of stupid. This Jew they tried to kill has risen from the grave, and they still think they can spread a lie about him and somehow cover it all up. I don't know why this is, but when I was preparing and I read and I was looking at these things, my mind went back to a time when I was in college. Right after I got out of college, I went to work for the power company, and while I was in college, I used to work for the power company in the summertime for a summer job. And I worked on a line crew. I was a grunt. That meant I never got off the ground, and I dug holes and lifted stuff and, all the stuff the other guys didn't want to do. And so I was working there, and while I was working there, and there was around that time, there was a tornado that came through the town, a really strong tornado. And I wasn't in the truck with the guys that this happened to, but one of them who was related the story. The tornado had completely demolished a school. A brick block school building had been leveled by this tornado. And so the guys got out there with the crew. They're starting to try to work to get the lines repaired and everything, and they're sitting in this big truck. And there's still some clouds in the area and still some bad weather, and one of them says, I'm not sure that we're really ought to be out here right now because there could be some more storms coming through. And the other guy says, well, I'm just glad we're sitting in this truck. I got 4 tons here. And the other guy just punches him. 50 feet to the left is a brick school building that's leveled. And the other guy said, I just punched him and did this. And, look out the window, dummy. And for whatever reason, that reminds me of the guards and the religious authorities that had rejected Jesus. It's like, what are you missing? This man just rose from the dead and predicted it ahead of time. And you think you can do something to stop him now? It's time to throw up the white flag and surrender and make sure you don't make him any madder than he is. It's time to get on his team. I'm fascinated by the stupidity and the resistance of a stubborn, prideful human heart. And I'm also scared by it. Because if that can happen to them, that could happen to me. And I don't want that. Why would anybody not want to follow Jesus? That just makes no sense. Well, there's also something here that's frustrating. We see that in verse 17, they go to the Galilee where Jesus had instructed them, and they go to the mountain that he had designated, and it says that they worship him, but Matthew adds that some hesitated or doubted. Now, let me just say as just a little side point here, that is a powerful confirmation of the reliability of the Bible in my mind. I mean, you take the most important people in the Bible and you read the accounts of the Bible, and the Bible is absolutely transparent about them. They don't try to paint them and sugarcoat them or in any way airbrush their life. They tell it just like it is. And especially of this event, the resurrection, which is of preeminent importance, Matthew doesn't hesitate a minute to mention that, oh, by the way, some of his followers weren't 100% in when they saw him. To me, that speaks volumes about how reliable the authors of the Bible were. But that being said, they saw him and they worshiped him. And the thing that's frustrating is, why would anybody, given convincing evidence of the reality of Jesus, not follow him and not completely surrender to him? Now, it's one thing to be, Jesus didn't call people to be admirers. You may be an admirer of Jesus, that gets you nowhere. And you may acknowledge that Jesus is who he is. Well, that's demon faith, according to James 2. What Jesus requires is a wholesale surrender to him and reliance upon him, and a life that's lived in light of the resurrection. That's what true life-changing faith is, or trust in Christ. I always use the analogy in marriage. How many of us would have gotten married if we say the vows to our spouse, I will love you when I feel like it. I will be home when it's convenient and I have nothing else to do. And I'll be loyal on occasion. Who's going to marry somebody that says that? But isn't functionally that what so many people do when it comes to Jesus? Hey, Jesus, you're there for me, and I'll follow you when it's convenient. I'll call you when I think I need you. Folks, that doesn't fly. That doesn't fly. With Jesus, it's all or nothing. Because he deserves us. He made us. He owns us. He redeemed us. We're his property. Don't try to steal what's his by keeping it for yourself. It's all in with Jesus. And it's frustrating that people given the evidence. Now, here's what this relates to, though, in this particular thing. They saw Jesus resurrected. These people were eyewitnesses of the resurrection. And it bears repeating that so many times we have this idea that believing in Jesus is just something we have to just kind of close our eyes and go, well, yeah. No, this is a confidence in a reliable historical witness of reality. We're not asked to have blind faith. We're given hard evidence that Jesus is who he claimed to be, really lived in this life, died a death on a cross, was buried, and rose again. We're given eyewitness accounts of that. How many times have you said, or maybe heard somebody say, well, I don't believe the Bible because you can't prove it scientifically. You can't prove you got out of bed this morning scientifically. Because in order to prove something scientifically, it's got to be repeatable and observable in a controlled environment to move from hypothesis to theory to law. You can't prove Washington was president scientifically, but you can prove it historically. And what we're talking about here is the Bible goes to great pains to give us historical proof of Jesus and the reality of his resurrection. Case in point, Paul refers in 1 Corinthians 15 to Jesus died according to the Scriptures. So in other words, what he did was consistent with what the prophets had said 100 years before. He was buried and he rose again according to the Scriptures. And he was seen by Peter and then the rest of the apostolic band. And Paul says, and 500 believers and himself. What Paul is doing is saying, what I'm talking to you about Jesus and the reality of Jesus is not something that's just a fairy tale. It's something that has valid witness and is provable, as it were, in a court of law. I once asked a lawyer, what if you had a case and had 500 witnesses to make your case? And they laughed and said, well, the judge would only allow 2 or 3 because that's enough. And then John the Apostle, when he writes in 1 John, what does he say in the lead line as he begins that letter? He says, that which we have seen, that which we have heard, that which we have touched with our hands, we declare to you. What's he saying? He's saying, I'm giving you eyewitness testimony, historical confirmation that Jesus Christ is real, that he rose from the dead, and not only me, but others have seen it. And you see, the Bible is there to give us that historical confirmation of the reality of Jesus. So it's not a blind faith, it's just a faith. You want to choose to believe it or not based on evidence that's undeniable. That Christ is real. And the power of that is something. I never will forget, years ago, I've shared a little bit of the story before. My wife and I were visiting some friends of ours, a Jewish man and his wife, and they had extended family there, and we were sitting in their den. He was a brilliant guy, Harvard grad, had it all. And we're sitting there, and we're talking about Jesus. And there was one of his relatives that was giving us really strong pushback, and I just said, you owe it to yourself to check it out. And you need to read the New Testament, because what if he was your Messiah and you missed him? And I said, no, by the way, it wasn't just a fairy tale. He was actually seen alive after the resurrection by 500 Jewish people. And my friend, who was the Harvard grad, when I said that, he understood the power of that instinctively. Because when I said that, he sat straight up in his chair and had an astonished look on his face, and he said, really? You mean there were people that actually reported seeing him alive after he was crucified? Yes. Yes. And he understood the power of that evidence that demands a decision. Why would anybody not want to follow Jesus? And then, not only is it fascinating and frustrating, but to complete the alliteration, it's also fantastic. Ultimately, why am I here today with you? Why am I here? Let me just to bare my soul. Why am I here with you? Well, very simple. As long as I can remember, I have been absolutely fascinated with Jesus of Nazareth. Even from a little child, the Galilean Jew absolutely has captivated me ever since I was small. And he captures my imagination. I have never heard of or encountered anybody as fantastic as him. Never. And just as I read about him and I see what he did and how he lived, I'm just amazed. You see, anybody who can live triumphantly in this life, and he did, who here has a problem-free life? Anybody here not have any problems? I don't see any hands. That's glad, because if you'd raised your hand, I just told you to go home. Because you're either lying or you're in a whole new world than I'm in, right? As the sparks fly upward, so people were born for trouble. Okay. Believe me, Jesus had them too. Bible says he was tempted in every way as we are, yet was without sin. Furthermore, Jesus said, in this world you'll have trouble, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world. And Jesus said, listen to this, come to me, all you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Jesus lived this life, had more problems than I'll ever have, successfully navigated them and was victorious over them, and promised repeatedly that He would give me the ability to have the same result with my life. I mean, here's a guy, I am, and my mother's here today, I can't lie about this, she's known me for a long time, is that I have always been a chronic worrier. Some of you that know me well know that. If I don't have something to worry about, I'll invent something to worry about. It's like I'm not right unless I'm worried about something. I mean, now I'm getting better. I mean, I fall off the wagon every now and then, but okay. But you're uptight about this now. Here's a guy, Jesus, who is in a boat, in a storm, with fishermen, sailors who are used to being on the water, and they're terrified because the storm is so bad, and the dude is asleep in the back of the boat. I want that. And He promised if I trusted Him, He'd give it to me. And then, the next thing I got figured out, took me a while, but I'm slow, but I'll get there. I'm going to die someday. Now, if Jesus returns, same result, just different, avenue. He may return before I die and before you die, but if He doesn't, guess what? You're a dead person walking. You're going to die. Jesus Christ died, predicted it beforehand, and predicted His resurrection in advance. Even His enemies acknowledged that. And guess what? He walked up out of a grave. Plus, He promised, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives and believes in me will never die. So not only did He die and live to tell about it, He promised that He would share that ability with me if I trust Him and follow Him. How do you explain not following Jesus? What is plan B that you have that's better? What is your option B? I'm sorry, I don't mean to be hateful, but I'll just be, if I don't follow Jesus, what do I call myself? Idiot. He lived and died and rose again so He could be my life and your life. Listen to me. I don't care what sin you got going on in your life, Jesus is bigger than that. I don't care what problem you got going on in your life, Jesus has already beaten it. I don't care what fear you've got in your life, Jesus, what irrational fear, Jesus has already overcome it. Why don't you stop trying to do it and let Him? You see, the resurrection proves this fantastic reality that Jesus Christ is alive. And He wants to share His life with us. What possible, reasonable response could there be to not take Him up on it? Because here's the rest of the story. He said that in the end, we can have Him now or later. In John chapter 5, Jesus says that all judgment, that God the Father has given all judgment to Him. So would you rather Jesus be your Savior or your judge? Because He said He's going to be one or the other. He Himself says that. Read John chapter 5. I'm not making this up. You're going to face Jesus one day, no matter, according to Jesus. And I don't believe He's lying because He rose from the dead. So why not take Him now as your Savior so you don't have to face Him later as your judge? What possible reason could there be to not give it all to Jesus? Lord, I pray for myself and everyone in this room right now that we will live like Jesus is really alive. That we won't live like Jesus is in the grave, but he's alive and well and with us right now. And may we respond to him in Jesus' name. Jesus is the best thing that ever happened to me. I commend him to you.